up on this Tuesday edition of Daybreak. South Korea makes another push for talks with North Korea, but Pyongyang says Seoul has to cancel its annual military drills with Washington for that to happen. South Korea's household debt edges closer to a staggering $1 trillion US, buoyed by low borrowing costs and eased lending requirements. Plus, Birdman takes home the Best Picture and Best Director Oscars at this year's Academy Awards. Redmayne and Julianne Moore win the Best Actor and Best Actress trophies. Daybreak begins now. Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Tuesday, February 24th. Here in Seoul, I'm Mark Broome and you're tuned in to Daybreak. Our top story this morning, South Korea has reiterated its call for dialogue with North Korea just days after Kim Jong-un himself oversaw live fire drills near the inter-Korean maritime border. But North Korea says it will refuse to hold talks unless Seoul scraps its upcoming joint military drills with Washington. Hwang Sang-hee starts us off.
South Korea on Monday urged North Korea to drop any military provocations that could disturb peace on the Korean peninsula. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un reportedly inspected live fire drills near the inter-Korean maritime border during the Lunar New Year holiday last week. Seoul's Unification Ministry responded by reiterating its call for dialogue.
Regardless of the current situation, we remain open to inter-Korean talks.
North Korea issued a series of threats ahead of the annual joint military exercises between South Korea and the United States, scheduled for early March. The North state-run Rodong-Sinmun newspaper said Monday that if South Korea conducts its rehearsal for invading the North with the U.S., South Korean waters will become a site of death. Although Seoul and Washington say the drills are defensive in nature, Pyongyang views them as a practice for war. The paper reiterated that South Korea must end all military hostilities, including the upcoming exercises, if it is sincere about improving inter-Korean ties. North Korea has yet to accept South Korea's offer for talks made nearly 2 months ago. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
And while we're on the topic of talks with Pyongyang, the United States is sticking to its position of seeking dialogue with North Korea while firmly responding to the regime's provocations. But experts say that with no shortage of other challenges to U.S. national security, North Korea has fallen well down Washington's priority list. Our Chae Yu-sun reports.
At the start of 2015, Washington slapped additional sanctions on Pyongyang for its alleged hacking of Sony Pictures late last year. In a State of the Union address later in the same month, however, President Barack Obama excluded any reference to North Korea. Then came the U.S. president's controversial YouTube interview in which he said the North Korean regime will eventually collapse as the internet penetrates further into the reclusive country.
And it is very hard to sustain that kind of brutal authoritarian regime in this modern world.
The State Department's official overseeing East Asian affairs days later said that bringing change to North Korea doesn't necessarily involve a collapse of the current leadership.
The fact of the matter is, we don't have a hostile policy. We have a denuclearization policy.
Washington's point man on North Korea, Sung Kim, reportedly failed at a recent attempt to engage with the North in a third country. While Kim has said the U.S. has always taken a two-track approach of enforcing sanctions and keeping the door to dialogue open, it seemed odd for the administration to make such a conciliatory gesture immediately after imposing new sanctions. Analysts suggest with the latest proposal, the administration sought to hold the North accountable for the impasse rather than actually resume talks. North Korea chumming up with Russia as of late is also not a welcome development for the U.S., especially as Moscow has invited both the South and North Korean leaders to its World War II commemorative ceremony in May. And that, according to some analysts, prompted President Obama to cause a stir. All in all, crises in the Middle East and Ukraine, along with prolonged deadlock in the North Korean issue, are thought to have diverted the White House's attention away from Pyongyang. Choi Yu-sun, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se says a revised nuclear accord between Seoul and Washington will help the two allies strengthen their ties even further. Speaking to a delegation from the Council on Foreign Relations on Monday, Minister Yoon said he hopes talks to revise the cooperative agreement will conclude in the near future. For the past 4 years, the two countries have been discussing a revision that would allow Seoul to reprocess spent nuclear fuel for research and development. The South Korean minister added that the two countries are also in talks over President Park Geun-hye's planned visit to the United States this year. Japan says it will consider all circumstances surrounding an annual regional ceremony claiming the Korea-controlled Dokdo Island as Japanese territory before deciding whether to elevate it to a central government event. Tokyo-based Kyodo News was reporting what Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga said on Monday. When asked about the ruling party's 2012 general election pledge to raise the status of the so-called Takashima Day event. Takashima is what the Japanese call the rocky islets off the eastern coast of Korea. Suga added Tokyo cannot accept Seoul's latest protest against the Abe administration, sending a senior government official to the so-called Takashima Day ceremony, this back on Sunday. In Korea, civic groups continued to hold rallies for a second day on Monday, calling for an end to the annual ceremony and Tokyo's continual claims to Dokdo. Now, fears are growing that Korea's household debt load could be becoming unsustainable as latest figures show it has snowballed to nearly $1 trillion US. Low borrowing costs and an easing of lending requirements is only exacerbating the problem. For a closer look at the implications of this huge debt mountain, Hwang Jie reports.
Korea's household debt shot up by almost $58 billion last year. In a report to the National Assembly on Monday, the Bank of Korea said that household loans by banks rose around $33 billion in 2014, and for non-banking institutions, $24 billion. When adding credit card bills and loans extended by all financial institutions like insurance companies, the total amount of household debt last year was estimated at over $980 billion. That means each Korean is in the red by about $20,000, considering the country's population that stands at around 50 million. Mortgage loans took up 80% of the total household debt, stemming from the central bank's 2 rounds of rate cuts that left the key rate at a record-matching low. The surge in debt was also spurred by the government's attempts to boost home transactions by easing real estate regulations. Experts are concerned that this growing household debt could drag down the domestic economy by denting private spending. They say households tend to refrain from spending even though their income may be rising because they either use the extra money to pay off their debt or to save up. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
Korea's central bank chief says he stands by the current easing policy to help the economy maintain its growth momentum. He added the central bank will also seek financial stability. Reporting to Parliament on Monday, Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol said that while the recovery remains weak, his outlook was rosy on the back of a global economic rebound and also low oil prices. Asked whether the BOK will further cut or raise the key interest rate, kept at a record low of 2% since October, he said the decision would depend on the economic situation. The central bank had raised concerns about high levels of household debt and its impact on the economy once the rate is brought back up. Now, Korea's shipbuilding industry was once one of the main driving forces of the country's economic growth. But a recent OECD report says that if the sector continues to struggle, as it has been doing for many years now, it could start having a seriously detrimental effect on the entire Korean economy. Kim Min-ji reports.
Korea's shipbuilding industry is facing serious challenges to getting itself back on solid footing. This according to a recent OECD report that says the global economic crisis has dented the industry's finances. The profitability, or EBITDA, on sales of publicly traded Korean shipbuilders stood at around 5% in 2012, in contrast to the 11% in 2008. EBITDA refers to the earnings before the deduction of interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization expenses. The figure also falls short of the levels recorded by companies in Japan, China, and Germany. The OECD report also points out that the ability of Korean shipbuilders to generate enough profit to cover their debts has declined significantly since 2007. It says while their average debt levels were less than 1.5 times larger than their profit in 2007, the ratio was above 6 in 2012. To be financially stable, a company's debt level should not be more than 3 times its profit. The shipbuilders' weak performance has also led to more government involvement, with government agencies increasing their ownership role in the industry and taking on more risk. If the situation were to continue, the report warns it could have an impact on employment and the financial sector, which could result in a domino effect on the economy as a whole. In dealing with the aftermath of the crisis, the report says the government needs to maintain a level playing field between public and private entities and manage its risks. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, it's a very common complaint. Your smartphone battery drains just far too quickly. Unless you use your device very lightly, and let's face facts, who does that? You'll be lucky to have much juice left at the end of the workday. But there are some quick and easy tips to help you prolong your battery life by using your smart device in a smarter way. Shin Se-min reports.
We make calls, text, take photos, watch videos, play games. The list goes on. Smartphones have permeated every part of our daily routine. But for some reason, they can't seem to get through today on a single charge.
3번이요.
저는 2번 하루에 배터리를 스페어 하나 사서 3개 쓰고 있습니다.
한 2-3번 정도 충전하고 있어요.
하루에 3-4번 이상 충전기에 꽂고 충전하는 편이에요.
Korea's Electro Technology Research Institute recently released a guidebook pinpointing some of the ways you can prolong your phone's battery life.
One thing you can do is to keep your phone at room temperature. Your lithium-ion-based batteries rely on electrically charged atoms, and they work the best at warm temperatures. So if you're out as the temperature drops, it is likely that your smartphone battery will drain more quickly. But if you must stay out and still want to keep that last inch of your battery life, just cover it up with a smartphone case or simply put it in a pocket.
Another tip, never let it drop to 0. Unlike the nickel-based batteries in older phones, the batteries in smartphones are designed to be charged frequently. So don't wait until your battery dies. Even if it's fully charged, it's better to keep the phone plugged in for another 2 hours so the energy is distributed to every part of the battery. Also, switch off the vibrate function and don't turn your phone on and off. It'll only drain your battery power. Dim the screen and disable the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth functions whenever possible. Kill applications if you're not using them. And cut back on unnecessary push notifications. Another Facebook update can wait. And you can always track your battery use through apps that'll help show you how to save up and stay charged. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Some pretty helpful advice there. Now, Korea got off to a pretty miserable start to the week on Monday as it was enveloped in a thick cloud of yellow dust that had blown in from China. We are happy to report that levels have dropped significantly this Tuesday morning, but these dust storms have become a yearly problem. And with more industrial pollution attaching itself to these sandy winds, officials in Seoul have been working with Beijing to try and tackle this issue. But as Lee Ji-yoon reports, it may be time for another approach.
The Korea Meteorological Administration issued yellow dust warnings in Seoul and other major cities throughout Korea Monday morning. Every year, this unhealthy yellow haze drifts from China and Mongolia, carrying with it industrial pollutants and bacteria, none of which are good for your respiratory health. In response, weather authorities here advise people to stay indoors and wear a protective mask and goggles when going outside. But some might ask, why can't we stop the dust from drifting into Korea? What has been done to make this unwelcome guest go away? Korea and China have been working together for over a decade to fight the yellow dust. Public and private groups from both countries have been planting more trees in the deserts of China and Mongolia to slow desertification. The two countries have also established working groups to research ways to counter rising levels of dust pollution and installed high-tech air monitoring equipment. During an environment ministers meeting between China, Japan, and Korea last year, the ministers talked about each other's environmental policies and agreed to work together to tackle various environmental issues, with improving air quality topping the list. But experts say these efforts are being overwhelmed by China's enormous population and industries that still rely heavily on coal, leading to more air pollution. They say it's time for China to actively develop clean energy to use in place of coal, and for its neighboring countries like Korea to better cooperate with China, as environmental problems like yellow dust have consequences that reach far beyond the borders of any one country. Lee Ji-yoon, Arirang News.
Time now for a look through the global headlines we're following this Tuesday morning from Seoul. For that, we turn to Eunice Kim, standing by at the News Centre. Good morning, Eunice.
And good morning to you, Mark. Following January's terror attacks, the French government has swooped in to confiscate the passports of 6 French nationals who they believe were preparing an imminent trip to Syria to join radical Islamist groups. It was the first adoption of an anti-terrorism measure passed back in November that enables the seizure of passports and identity cards of suspected jihadists. France's Interior Minister said some of the 6 came to be known through a hotline put in place last year, while others were identified through ongoing investigations. He added that 40 more administrative bans on leaving the country were in progress. The bans are good for 6 months, with a possibility for renewal and can be appealed against in court. Similar measures are in place in the UK and Germany. Australia's Prime Minister Tony Abbott on Monday also announced tough anti-terror measures, including revoking or suspending citizenship for dual nationals involved in terrorism. Greece will submit its list of proposed reforms to its EU partners by Tuesday morning, missing a Monday deadline by a few hours to secure a 4-month bailout extension. After a lengthy and windy back and forth, Athens had reached an agreement to the extension with lenders late Friday, contingent on reforms that it says will focus on curbing tax evasion and cutting unnecessary red tape. The move kept the Greek economy from the risk of a default and an exit from the euro, but it does put Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras in a tough situation, including within his own Syriza party, which had promised to leave the debt program in the country's latest general election. U.S. President Barack Obama is warning of a looming shutdown of his country's Department of Homeland Security, which runs out of money at the end of the month. Speaking before a meeting of state governors at the White House, the U.S. leader said the partial shutdown would have a direct impact on America's economy and national security, as it would mean leaving more than 100,000 airport security, border patrol, and port inspection agents out of a job. With a February 20 27th deadline looming, a Homeland Security appropriations bill has been unable to pass the Senate, following House amendments that strip funding from Obama's executive orders on illegal immigration. Meanwhile, over in Hollywood, this year's Oscar ceremony has wrapped up with the biggest names in the movie industry celebrating well into the night. The dark comedy Birdman, about a struggling actor, got the highest accolades on Sunday, winning the Academy Award for Best Picture. Filmmaker Alejandro Inarritu also took home the award for Best Director. In his acceptance speech, he dedicated the win to his fellow countrymen.
I want to dedicate this award for my fellow Mexicans, the ones who live in Mexico. I pray that we can find and build the government that we deserve, and the ones that live in this country who are part of the latest generation of immigrants in this country. I just pray that they can be treated with the same dignity and respect of the ones who came before and built this incredible immigrant nation. Thank you very much.
Other top honors went to Eddie Redmayne, who won his first Oscar for his breakout role in The Theory of Everything. And fifth time was a charm for Julianne Moore, who was named Best Actress for her performance in Still Alice. However, it was a disappointing night for the coming-of-age story Boyhood, which earned only one Oscar out of 6 nominations.
And a good Tuesday morning to you all as we kick things off in football, where FIFA execs will meet later today in Doha to discuss the possibility of hosting the 2022 World Cup in Qatar during winter. But reports indicate it's most likely going to happen. Now, with the extreme heat being an issue, what was once a rumor is turning into reality, as FIFA executives will plan out how they're going to go about having the major football event during wintertime, then finalize it in March. But it'll affect the leagues all around the world, including the K-League Classic, where the tail end of the season will take place around that time, with teams fighting for the league title. Now, one of the top awards a Korean athlete can receive here in the nation is the Korean Olympic Committee's Grand Prize. And on Monday, that award went to not Kim Yeon-ah nor Son Yeon-jae, but Park Seung-hee. Now, the 22-year-old who won 2 gold medals and a bronze during last year's Sochi Winter Games claimed the grand prize during the 61st Korean Olympic Committee Awards ceremony on Monday, grabbing the title as the top athlete here in Korea. Now, the former short track star, who's now competing in speed skating, hopes to win more medals as a speed skater during the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Games. Now, the person who's been training Park Seung-hee in her quest to become a world-class speed skater is the 2-time Olympic gold medalist Lee Sang-hwa. But fortunately for her, her season has now come to an end. Now, after failing to win a single medal for the first time in 7 years during the single distances speed skating championships, Lee Sang-hwa has come out stating that she'll have to shut down her season and cancel all her scheduled events. With fatigue and injured left knee being the reason for her recent struggles, she has decided to take a break and treat her knee in time for the 2015-2016 season. Now, whichever sport you play, you always remember your very first victory. And especially if that first win took so long to get, just like Korean-American James Han during the 2015 Northern Trust Open. Now, with the 34-year-old finding himself tied with Dustin Johnson and Paul Casey after the 18th hole over the weekend, he nails a long birdie putt on the 3rd playoff hole to clinch his very first PGA Tour title of his career. And with this first victory came a huge jump in the world golf rankings as he climbs up 211 spots and is now ranked 86th in the world. Meanwhile, for Bae Sang-moon, who's still facing military duty issues, finished tied for 8th and is now ranked 75th in the world, up 4 spots from before. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. The level of yellow dust has finally gone back to the normal level, but the levels of fine dust remains very high across much of the country. So have that protective mask with you on your way out. But the high level of fine dust is forecasted to go back to the normal range as the day goes on. And big temperature gaps are expected today. Sub-zero morning lows will hike up to 6 later on here in Seoul, while other regions will also notice a big temperature difference, so dress accordingly to avoid catching a cold. With that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. So the daytime high here in Seoul will climb up to 6, while the top temperatures in Daegu and Gwangju will rise to 11 and 10, and Busan will get up to 12 this afternoon. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island and Daejeon will rise to 10 and 9, and Dokdo should top out at 6 this afternoon. That's all for the weather. Have a wonderful start to the day.
Thank you very much, Jiyeon, for the weather. And that's going to do it for now. Korea Today is coming up in half an hour's time. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.